Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic bonus movie review podcast. It's our Christmas episode. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
Hey, I met you. You are not cool.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
Stick around.
I won't do too many before the show promos, but IHateCritics.net. Our Facebook page is Everyone's a Critic. Critics Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Follow us there on all those platforms. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. And then IHateCritics.net/Patreon to be a Patreon supporter and help the podcast grow. It's Christmas Day.
Can you tell?
We're doing 2 shows tonight. This is our bonus show. The way this one works is instead of coming up with Christmas movies every year to talk about, we actually just buy each other movies and talk about them that way. So these movies are random and all over the place genre-wise. So, Sean, you're going to talk about the movies you gave, or tell us why and how you came up with the movies you gave Josh and I.
All right. Well, the movie I chose for Josh is Westworld, and this goes back to a conversation we've had a lot about me watching westerns and always ending up liking them. My dad tried to get me into westerns when I was very young, and I refused. I refused to watch them. I was very serious about not watching them, and he goes, "Fine, okay. What if I find you a western that has robots and sword fighting?" It's like, oh, okay, I'll watch that. And I saw Westworld, and I loved it. And it's a phenomenal film. And I didn't even realize until this week that it was directed by Michael Crichton, even though I've seen it a couple times. And it's just such an incredibly smart, unexpected movie. Yul Brynner is the gunslinger, and he's just remarkable. He's so unique and interesting to look at. These 2 leads, James Brolin and Richard Benjamin, they're not given much to do. They're not. The first part of it is just kind of us enjoying what they're doing, and then there's also this little element of just like, fuck rich people paying $1,000 a day to do this crap. You kind of side with the robots a little bit, and I like that element to it. So there's subversion, there's gunfights, there's the fun of dress up. It's a pretty terrific film.
You know, you'd think that it's something I would have come across before, especially because there are multiple films. There's Future World and et al. I can't remember what else. And then there's a television show that's essentially a recreation of this entire world. And Michael Crichton being such a part of our pop culture for at least attempting to bring science into discussions of popcorn films. In this one, yes, it's a Western, and yes, you've got Yul Brynner there, and so people's minds immediately go to the tone and themes of Westerns, and you make him the Terminator, which is interesting. There are so many parallels from Westworld to Terminator, in fact, that once again, my bar for James Cameron is being lowered that much more. And that's no offense to the Terminator and Terminator 2, because I love those movies.
Right, but when you look at Yul Brynner, do you not see the exact template for what Robert Patrick played in Terminator 2?
It's 100% carbon copied in a way, because not only is it because of his mannerisms, his gait, his gaze,
eyes,
whatnot. The eyes, particularly, especially when the camera goes dark or there are dark rooms, the eyes of the robot don't react, of course, the same way as the human's eyes do. And so they're kind of 2 beady things looking at you in the dark. That's a thing right there. On top of that, his robot gets maimed and set on fire and all of these things. And so you're starting to think to yourself, oh, wow, this is even more like the T-1000. Overall, as a film, the tone of it is such that it needs to be short, okay? It needs to be taught. You aren't having larger sociological discussions that you might have. And James Cameron would probably make this a 2.5-hour movie. And you'd have Sigourney Weaver in a boardroom trying to talk people down, and he'd make it wrong. But at an hour and 29 minutes, I think. It's pretty much right around there. It's a very succinct idea. People coming into the resort, the rich people or whatnot. Richard Benjamin is something of a sympathetic character, of course, in that he's excited about this as an idea, not so much as a playboy. And they cast him smartly, contrast with James Brolin, because he's much more of the typical handsome man, the matinee idol who's already got this world figured out. Okay, and there's smart casting here. It's a smart idea. It's shorter in tone or shorter in time, in which the tone that it has, and that it's kind of rapid paced and constantly keeping that threat of something chasing you. And are the robots going to overthrow this entire vacation society of Delos? Are they going to throw it over? That is the main focus of it. And I would imagine that this is explored a little bit more in the future films. I
I've
could
not
be
seen
wrong.
the rest of them, but
Okay.
I love. This is that rare movie that lives in its moment. Nobody's too concerned about why this is happening. They're concerned in keeping themselves alive, and so they realize that they don't have time to figure out why the robots are losing their minds. There's some scientific dialogue that kind of gives an idea, like some sort of thing that's happening, but nobody really dwells on it because there's not a lot of dialogue in this movie at all. There's not a lot of talking. It's a very of the moment a movie, which is interesting when you're talking about a director who's also an author. You would think he would lead the way with dialogue, but he doesn't. He leads the way with action.
Yeah, you would think that he would spend a lot more time in the control rooms, but there's just enough conversation where they're giving it the service that they need to. You know that someone is talking about this. Why are the robots malfunctioning? And you're given this idea that there are also prostitute robots, and that's in 1973. No matter which way you look at it, I think that's kind of a big deal. I mean, there's no sex robots with nipples or robot nipples or anything like that. Which, I mean, to an extent, is slightly disappointing. But the movie it keeps from being a bit more exploitative that way and set in a genre specifically. I mean, it's a science fiction movie that happens to be set in a Western environment. I wouldn't even call it a Western, so that was a good way to lure you in. It probably would have done the same to me. But there's just enough to keep you interested in the possible side plot of androids and the discussion you can have after the film, as well as just enough suggestion at some lewd subject matter that, as a fanboy, you're still kind of hooked in, expecting there to eventually be naked robots.
There's also there's a little element of Cabin in the Woods there too.
You can't tell me about that because I don't know. I still haven't seen it. It's the one movie on this podcast that you guys have been telling me about since I've been on here.
Sorry, Bob. There's a little bit of Cabin in the Woods.
Next Christmas.
Yeah, there we go. Yep. But overall, it's a very enjoyable film. I'm glad that you pointed it in my direction, especially with my unabashed love for the Terminator franchise, save for the one that doesn't exist. It really is something that I should have seen before, and lovers of Terminator that I've been in conversations with should have looked at me and said, hey, you've seen Westworld, right? This is clearly in the same mold as that. I recommend all Terminator fans to see this, or fans of science fiction in general. Michael Crichton, he occasionally gets it really boring and wrong, like the China, not the China syndrome, the alien one, and it's the DNA of the aliens, and I'll figure it out eventually. It's
Fear?
Sphere is another one that's really boring. It's a terrible film.
Looker is one that's really bad too. But it has Susan Day naked. That's what I watched it on HBO late at night. That's really all I remember about it, other than the title.
I'm going crazy with the title of this other movie. That's okay. The point is that it's very boring, and I wouldn't suggest watching it. It's not the China syndrome, for crying out loud. It's in the same vein. Go on.
All right. Do you guys watch the TV show at all?
No, but
No, I haven't either.
I know that Anthony Hopkins is in it, which, be that as it may, I've always wanted to see Anthony Hopkins as the controller of a particular technological innovation that's gone wrong, and he's the guy that you go to that's like the major boss, that he has to be the one explaining to you the reasons why this happens. In my theoretical last Alien film, I always thought there would be a moment between Sigourney Weaver and Anthony Hopkins, and he would be telling her why it's important to have these things on Earth and everything. I'm geeking out bad
And
now.
then he
Okay,
made-
save me.
And then he made Chappie, and I'm never going to get it.
You're right.
I haven't had any interest in watching the Westworld TV show because it can't be anything like the movie. I mean, because they've got episodes and upon episodes to fill, and this movie at 89 minutes covers everything that it needs to cover. You can't live in a moment on a TV show. You've got to create, long, ongoing stories, and Maybe it works, but I don't really have any interest in finding out because it's not my Westworld.
If it works in a different way.
Yeah.
All right, what was the other movie you got? For me.
Yes, the movie I got for you was The Dirty Dozen, starring Lee Marvin. And this is basically Suicide Squad in World War II. Charles Bronson, Telly Savalas, Jim Brown, Donald Sutherland. What an incredible
John
cast.
Cassavetes.
Trini Lopez play guys who've been given either death sentences or long-term prison sentences.
Life sentences, yeah.
And they get recruited to go on a suicide mission, essentially, to try and kill a bunch of Nazis. It's a movie that's influenced the work of Tarantino. Obviously, it's influenced a lot of the comic book writers who picked up on that for Suicide Squad. And I thought, it's pretty violent. Bob will like that.
And it's also loosely based on like a real life story about 13 or something. 13 guys. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I guess I'm not very good at describing movies, but you kind of did most of it. I would say there was one. I enjoyed this part of the movie, but when there's kind of that internal struggle between Lee Marvin's character and the other major or whatever, it was fun to watch them have their little mini war, but all it did was add time to the movie. It didn't actually advance the movie at all.
I really can't watch that without hearing Kiefer Sutherland's voice in my head from The Simpsons, because he basically recreates that on The Simpsons.
And I mean, that's the closest thing I have to a complaint about it, because and then is it Ernest Borgnine's character is kind of cartoony, but otherwise it's a really, really, and even with all that, it's really, really watchable. Like 2 hours and 20 minutes or something like that.
But as long as it is, it does not feel like it.
And just I've seen things that have come after that, like you mentioned, The Simpsons and the Suicide Squad and other things where you have that leader trying to turn a bunch of guys, get them to work as a team, and you can definitely see the influence this movie has had on a lot of other movies after that. It was just a lot of fun to watch, and then recognizing just about everybody in it: Donald Sutherland and Jim Brown and Charles Bronson. It was
Telly Savalas just freaking the fuck out. Just loses his damn mind. That's so great.
Yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised with how easy to watch and how much I enjoyed it. It was a couple of days ago. I couldn't sleep. I woke up at like 4 a.m. I was like, screw it. I just got up and watched it, and then it kept me awake. It's a good, fun movie that's easy to watch. No homework involved at all. I'd imagine I haven't seen The Magnificent Seven, but I'm assuming that it's kind of more in that vein, kind of more watchable, blockbustery war movie than a Deer Hunter. But I definitely would recommend it to anybody who gets a chance to see it.
I would always watch this well before I watch anything like on the Western
All
Front.
Quiet on the Western Front?
Yeah, that movie is so boring. Or even to a point, like I would prefer this over Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, hands down. I agree completely.
The Dirty Dozen.
Yes.
Really? Wow, interesting. Okay.
Have you seen it?
Just in terms of watchability.
In thinking of The Magnificent Seven, when we covered that on the show, like the Yul Brynner one or whatnot, I remember there being a few scenes that were really great, but overall it was more of a popcorn film. And I was thinking, looking at the description of this, and it's not rated, and it's 2.5 hours long, and you've got all this talent involved, that it has that same formula as The Magnificent Seven, but it's World War II movie. I kind of like this idea, and it makes me wonder, things like the Suicide Squad and other ragtag bunches of a-holes that you get together to go do something. Inglourious Bastards comes to mind, obviously.
Heavily influenced by this.
So, this might be like the original one of those. Maybe I'm wrong, but
yeah, and they kind of take some time early on. They don't play music between introducing every character. They do spend a little time introducing the characters before the movie gets going, and I was like, hey, Suicide Squad did that too.
Yeah.
No one liked it when they did it.
Most of the people involved with this film with Suicide Squad weren't born yet, I would imagine, in 1967.
Right. But no, definitely, it's just another movie I can cross off the list, and actually enjoyed it, so thank you for that.
Sure. This director, Robert Aldrich, really didn't do anything else. I think that kind of holds back the reputation of The Dirty Dozen a little bit because he doesn't really have a great resume beyond this. He did Whatever Happened to Baby Jane was his other big hit. So that tells you what you need to know about him.
But Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson and everybody else went on to do lots of things.
Yes.
Josh, you bought us some movies.
I did, and you would think just by looking at the titles, one of them should have gone to Sean, one of them should have gone to Bob, and that would make sense, right? But there's a method behind the madness. I got Sean Event Horizon, which if you've heard any of our shows before, I've been very vehement in my abhorrence of that film, that it's in my top 5 worst films of all time. It is maybe the worst film experience I've had other than going to see Black Hawk Down. The whole thing surrounding it, plus the director and the work that he's done after has kind of verified my opinion just a bit, and that he's a shitty director. So it stood to reason that we should come to it on this podcast at some point, because Bob has stated that it's not a bad movie. I don't understand why you're putting it on that level. And Sean, I mean, you obviously saw it at some point,
right?
And you didn't like it enough to say like it's on your top whatevers or even in remote discussion of favorites. But I thought, well, there's another one that I am struggling with because I would love to give that to one of you, mainly because I haven't seen it, and it's Ridley Scott. And somebody else in my life told me that it was their favorite movie, and it's a Ridley Scott movie that I hadn't seen. Amazing. So I should give that to one of you, and I was struggling with how to do that. Do I give you A Good Year, which is Bob's film, considering you'd likely seen it in the theater when it came out, so that would be just repetition for you. And finding you a film that you haven't seen that I know that I like is a struggle too. I mean, we're 1, 2, 3, 4 years into this experiment. There's no way I'm going to find something I have seen that you have not that you will enjoy. So I had to beat around the bush a little. Ostensibly, it's getting Bob 2 movies. But one of them is given to you for the purpose of a good discussion.
Keep away from Bob just enough that he can't watch it this week and properly defend it.
Yes. Force you to watch the Ridley Scott movie because you're less predisposed to dislike him or call him the architect or the carpenter. That you would.
Tony is. Yeah.
It was totally.
Right. And you're more apt to at least say less critical things of Event Horizon than I will. You'll deconstruct it perhaps in the most articulate way of the three of us. And that's what I valued the most, not because I wanted to dump Event Horizon on you. But please, go ahead.
Event Horizon stars Lawrence Fishburne and Sam Neill. It's set on a ship called the Lewis and Clark that's going out to a ship called Event Horizon that's somewhere near Mars and may or may not be dead. They get there and they find out, most of the crew or the entire crew is dead, but there's something else on board. Some kind of gateway has been opened, and I believe it's hell has come through. And this movie is so terrible. It's really so bad. Paul W. Anderson cannot direct anything. How anybody keeps hiring this man is just beyond me. There's nothing good about this. Lawrence Fishburne, aside from Lawrence Fishburne and his little chair, that little hanging chair that he's got is so cute and adorable. Other than that, there's nothing really good about this movie. It's really, really dumb. Every single space movie cliche is hit. You get your 2001 moment. You get your every other kind of astronaut movie moment you're going to get in this piece of shit. Not very well done. It doesn't look good. The gore isn't especially good. The makeup is bad. The special effects are atrocious. By 1997, we've already seen Jurassic Park. You know what I mean?
But not Jurassic Park in space.
If he can create real dinosaurs, this guy can create a realistic space, and he didn't. He couldn't even animate properly what it was like a wallet floating through the air. Like, come on, man! I could almost so much digitized. It's so bad. Everything is just so terrible in this movie.
The good thing is you're saying it's still bad, and you were watching a Blu-ray copy. Okay, because I was watching a standard definition copy of the film this week, and I did revisit it for the first time in 20 and a half years this week because I owed it its due time, right? What I noticed about it that I liked, honestly, was the way in which all of the actors at least took this seriously. Okay, they know what movie they appear to be in, which is a B or C level science fiction film. And all of them play it like that. It's not anyone orating or pontificating. Like Sam Neill has the ability to do that, and he doesn't. There's a couple of scenes where he takes it over the top once he goes down, the rabbit hole of villain. But the other thing is the production design. Okay, that alone could be a great movie. And I feel like in really analyzing the film, that's where all of the costs went, is to the actors and the production design. And the special effects are atrocious. They really are. All of the floating things on the event horizon are like, wait, oh no, you put that on a matte painting. I mean, that's how bad it really looks. And then all of the special effects and the clips that they see from what happened on the event horizon before coming into contact with it, those aren't very good either. The scenes of the ship, the Lewis and Clark and the event horizon floating through space near Neptune are poorly rendered. When you see a good-looking science fiction film, the star field, it immerses you. It makes you feel like you're there. And in this case, they didn't have the budget for it, it seems.
I've seen YouTube clip art sci-fi movies that look better than this.
Yes, it can add that with it. The titles make it seem like it's something that should appear on sci-fi because they're just poorly done. They go very quickly, and you've got Prodigy playing over the end credits for some reason. I don't understand why Funky Shit. The song's title is called Funky Shit, relating to anything in this film at all.
I think they were hot at that moment, and they wanted it on the soundtrack.
Yes. 1997 was the year of Prodigy, and they're popular somewhere, I'm sure, still. But
there is a lot of silliness in this movie, and the scene that stands out to me that I could not get past was out of nowhere, with no setup whatsoever, Connie Nielsen starts calling Jack Noseworthy Baby Bear. Come back, Baby Bear. Open the door, Baby Bear. Then he turns around out of nowhere after he comes out of his stance and goes, Mama Bear, open the door. What the fuck is going on? Where did this come from?
They've had some sort of maternal relationship before the film existed.
Establish that. You have to establish that.
Yeah, and then when they come back, it'd be fine.
Reveal that shit? You just suddenly Mama Bear and Baby Bear? What the hell? You're adults. Be adults. This is an adult situation. This guy's about to die. Jesus.
The last thing I'll say about it before we get to the opinion that matters on this. To be
I was
very
a
honest.
teenager when I saw it, man. I haven't seen it since.
So was I. Okay. But there's got to be a reason why, and I'm sure you've probed it this week. The idea of this film, the first 40 minutes, has a wonderful seed of an idea in which something has disappeared and come back in the same spot from whence it disappeared. Where did it go? As a science fiction idea, I'm on board. Please sign me up. And my mom and I were sitting in the theater next to each other saying, oh, where did they go then? Where did they go? I mean, and then Sam Neill does the wonderful explanation of how they created a wormhole by folding space over, and you push the pencil through the paper, and, oh, how did you do that? We're not sure. They've got this gravity drive, and the gravity drive explains everything, and that's all that you need to know. Sam Neill's even reticent to explain how they make the gravity drive in the movie. So it's still nebulous how they actually did this and defied the laws of physics. That's okay, because I was buying it still, and then as soon as it's clear that it went to hell, I thought, no. I mean, it's the worst plot twist I've ever experienced in the theater. And I asked my mom twice, can we just go? Can we just go? And I stayed till the end and then got Prodigy screaming at me.
Why didn't Lawrence Fishburne just punch out Sam Neill or shoot him? I mean, he's trying go back to the Clark. Why? You don't want him to go back to the Clark. He wants to stay there. Let him stay there. Let him die. He's gotten all your people killed. You already hate him. Leave him there. Just leave him on the event horizon. Don't worry about where he is, and don't let him on your ship. That was stupid. Lawrence Fishburne makes dumb decisions all the way through this movie because it's required by the plot.
Bob? See how I set this up over years?
Let me preface this by saying, one, it's fun to troll Josh on occasion. And I know he hates this movie, and I vaguely remember being like, oh, that's neat, when I was a teenager. I did not get to it this week because we had a shit ton of movies to watch on a number of different levels. All I can really say is, from someone who likes the horror idea, the idea of another dimension being hell, if hell were to exist, it'd probably be somewhere in space. that idea I think's neat. But I mean, it kind of maybe it's more the idea than the movie. I did not go back and watch it. I probably wouldn't have liked it if I had, which is part of why I didn't go back and watch it. But I mean, that's kind of where it begins and ends for me. Is I think the twist of it being in hell was at the time. I mean, you have all the other science fiction movies weren't going anywhere near that. They were either had a monster or it was just a full blown space movie.
Yeah.
So it was at the time something kind of different, but I'm sure it's bad because it's the guy who made it.
It's really horrible. It's so
It's been
horrible.
a long time.
The one that Bob I gave to you is called A Good Year. It's a Ridley Scott movie from 2006, I believe. Stars Russell Crowe and Marion Cotillard and Albert Finney and a host of others. I had never seen it, but I did watch it this week to try and catch up with it. I'd like to know your opinion first because you kind of already gave me your opinion without necessarily going into detail via message.
I got nothing bad to say about it per se. It was just kind of a movie you've in a way seen before, made by two guys who don't make movies like this very much, if that makes any sense. So I mean, I didn't dislike it. It was just kind of okay. He's gonna stay, you know.
So nothing about the depth of the idea of vintages and wine and how that relates to your personal experience and how people can grow attached to crops and things like that and how that affects the taste of them if you sing to them and that particular place versus the place that he came from and he needed to change his entire life to understand life and he started to recognize the paintings and all that good stuff. No? Yeah, kind of, sort of.
No.
Okay. Okay, fair. Now you saw this, and I'm sure you reviewed it as well at some point.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
It's my review that I found was on a website I used to write for years ago where we had a star system, and it was 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
So
okay.
it's not a
got a
bad.
D.
So
We got a D.
it's not a bad movie. It's not a particularly good movie. The only thing that stood out to me about the entire film is one exchange of dialogue. That I really just I love this at the time, and now I look at it now and go, "What the hell was I thinking?" But at the time, I wrote it down in my phone when I saw it. I think I had to text it to somebody to do that because I didn't have any way of saving it on that phone. But I would like a lifetime spent with an irrational and suspicious goddess, some short-tempered jealousy on the side, and a bottle of wine that tastes like you, a glass that's never empty. I liked that line. That line got to me.
Me too.
That's the only thing I remember about the movie is that line. And, the rest of it was like, yeah, that's okay. That's all right.
I thought Russell Crowe, for all that he can be sometimes and typical and in an action setting or whatnot, occasionally shines through a little bit. And he's got so much charisma in this movie, and he's playing a dude that you shouldn't like, but you end up kind of rooting for him and liking him and wanting him to understand what life is all about and wanting him to be more like the Albert Finney character. Not that the Albert Finney character didn't have flaws, but it was his character arc that I kind of liked, and Russell Crowe pulled that off for me. And I was thinking about it. Is there anybody else who I would have wanted to see in this movie? No, not really. I mean, he pulls off the look and the attitude of a major stockbroker in London, as well as a guy that could be seen wearing flip-flops all day on the countryside, getting fat along Marion Cotillard. I can see that. Towards the end of the film, the scene in which he's watching her come in and out of the house, bringing lunch to the table and whatnot, and the arguments between the winemaker, the crop guy, the farmer, basically, on this plot that lives there. I can't remember what the French name. I thought it was set in Italy, too, and instead it's set in France. People are speaking French throughout the damn whole movie, so that pissed me off, because I thought it was Italian, and then it ends up being that. All of that made me I was immersed in that scene. I really dug that. It's nice to see Ridley Scott step out of his usual genre wheelhouse and do something different.
But you know why he did that, though? You know why he did this movie?
So he could spend 4 or 5 months in France drinking wine?
Because the set was 10 minutes from his home.
I give up.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit I spent a good portion of the movie going, why this one? What was he thinking?
Ridley Scott's vacation movie. Okay.
I mean, and so that may have. I don't know. When you say Russell Crowe's a perfect guy for this, well, so is Hugh Grant, so is Hugh Jackman, so is a lot of guys who've done this a million times before.
Those two are too anxious to be seen as like super successful. Russell Crowe, I can see him as the super successful guy.
Does super successful very well.
Hugh Jackman could have given a dewy-eyed version of this.
John Cusack's done it before. They've all done it repeatedly, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's fine.
It's a little unexpected from Russell Crowe.
Girlfriend started to call this about halfway through the film, Under the Tuscan Sun for Men. I thought, hey, that's insulting, isn't it? Right? Because that movie sucks, and she's like,
much better movie than this.
Oh, no, I hate that. Oh. Man. Well, okay, that was the reasons behind both of these movies. Sorry, or you're welcome. One of the two.
Another one I get to say, hey, I've seen that. That was good. It was okay. Gentle, pleasant.
A gentle and pleasant year is what you say.
Gentle and pleasant bad? There's nothing wrong with gentle and pleasant. And then I had to come up with movies, and like Josh said, Sean's always hard to come up with movies for. So last year, this movie popped in my head that I remember liking when I was a teenager, around that age, and then I gave it to Sean, and it ended up being really bad. So
Eulogy. Yeah. Wow.
And so this year, I remember this French-Canadian horror movie that has stuck with me, and I've been wanting to bring to the podcast for a long time. But at the same time, I knew it was violent. I forgot that it was in the torture porn genre until after I'd given it to him, and then I forgot how graphic it was. But I knew there were scenes in it that were worth talking about. And when I read the reviews, if you look at the critics, you can tell which ones watched the movie and which ones just kind of watched it from a distance. Because it's definitely a split movie. But I got him Martyrs from 2008, French-Canadian horror film, and I'm sorry.
No, don't be. I like this movie a lot. In fact, I love this movie. And that's the thing about me when it comes to torture porn. I don't define torture porn the way everybody else does. Just because a movie has torture in it doesn't mean that it's pornographic. Like I associate pornography with something that people enjoy, and I don't think people would enjoy the torture of this movie. The torture of this movie has a point and a purpose. There's something that's being done here that is commentary in multiple different ways. But the idea sets up with this girl who escapes from her torturers. Somehow, she's taken to a home, and she meets a friend named Anna, and these two grow up together. We don't get to see them grow up, but we know that they've been friends. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, we cut to this domestic setting, this home, where there's this family that's just going through a normal, everyday thing. They don't seem very unusual at all. The director even takes care to set up little things that in other movies would pay off. There's a little newspaper clipping that's hung on the refrigerator about the daughter being a champion swimmer, and you think, remember that's going to pay off later. Nope. No, it doesn't. That has nothing to do with the rest of this movie, because that girl is dead. She is dead moments later. Knock on the door. Girl walks in with a shotgun, just starts blowing everyone away. And it's so shocking and so graphic. And then of course, that's the girl who was being tortured as a kid. And she's come to this home because she believes that these are the people who tortured her. And she wants to get revenge. She feels that this revenge will relieve whatever psychic torture she's undergoing from this thing that she keeps seeing that no one else can see. And again, there's another thing that the movie sets up that you think is going to be important. No, that's not important. There's a whole other thing going on. Stay tuned. And man, does this movie go to a place that I just could not have predicted. That is so smart and so shocking and brilliant that it affected me so deeply. There's a series of scenes where we watch this girl being tortured, and it's day after day of this routine. She's force-fed, she's beaten, she's stripped and cleaned, she's beaten, she's fed again, beaten, and you watch this happen day after day, and it started to remind me of what it's like for people who go to a job every day that you hate. Like it's like you truly hate. Like you go to this thing and you just know it's like, and your mind is torturing you the entire time that you're there. And that kind of, I'm not sure if the director even meant to imply that, but it certainly felt that way to me. It felt like I could read that into this, about this being, and especially when you add in what's going on, is they're trying to force this woman to a place of pain that is so painful that she transcends pain, transcends humanity into another realm, which some could read as self-actualization, which I really grabbed onto that, and I was really fascinated by that. And the end of the movie is so shocking and so violent that you have to see it for yourself. It's remarkable what they do at the end of this movie. I was really, really blown away by it.
Yeah, it never left my mind, that end of the movie. And to me, I'd almost be like, if you opened the movie with that, domestic scene and forget the stuff even before that, how much cooler that would have been. And because you could have done it, I think. But yeah, it really does just kind of keep changing the direction it's going in until that torture part where they're like literally pulling the skin off this poor girl. Ugh. I don't know. It just, and at no point did it's not like I don't like this thing because it's fun. I just like it because it's challenging. That's kind of what I go for out of it. And when I was looking at the critical reviews again after I gave it to Sean, kind of like shit, I gave him another eulogy. This is the one that kind of stuck out the most to me. It's from Simon Foster. I don't even know who he is. He's from Australia, I think. But it says, Martyrs is a groundbreaking work. It challenges the audience to endure heinous acts, yet to emerge spiritually cleansed, to witness man's willingness to abuse, degrade, and manipulate, yet leave the theater more enamored with humanity than ever, which is kind of... it sounds like an oxymoron, but it isn't. He really does walk this fine line. And it's pretty fascinating. I did give it to Josh too, not really thinking it was a Josh type movie, but he might, if after we got done talking about it, if he liked it enough, maybe he'd check it out. But
I will be checking it out. I just didn't have time to fit it in this week. But I'm glad that you guys didn't give enough of the film away in your discussion to make me expect something coming. Nothing that you said isn't what I would normally expect from this type of film. Question though, do they speak French in the film?
French Canadian.
It's subtitled, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'll give it back to you.
Do I have to read this movie?
Anything but French.
But yeah, that made me feel a little bit better. I mean, still giving torture porn at Christmas isn't always the best thing in the world, but and then the other one I was trying to figure out something for Josh because all my good movies from the 80s that I knew he hadn't seen and I had seen, I think we've kind of run through those and we've kind of ran those out. So I just bought him a Kevin Smith gift pack that had like Zack and Miri and Clerks 2 in it, and I said I'd let him pick one. I'm assuming he picked Clerks 2.
I did. You're
and
right.
I watched it as well, and then there was a part in it where they're talking about hobbits and Lord of the Rings where I kind of cringed a little because it kind of is at the time was not as politically incorrect as it is now. And in a way, it doesn't hold up to Clerks, but at the same time, there are some laugh out loud moments, for me at least, that kind of make up for any shortcomings that the movie has. But Josh, what did you think?
Yeah, you're right in that it's not quite as fantastic as Clerks is. And it's been roughly a year now since we talked about Clerks. And I found it to be a completely different experience for me than the first time. And thus looked forward to this way more than I was thinking it would be have to live up to some kind of standard, which is what I did the first time with Clerks. The film centers around Dante and the dude, Jeff Anderson's character's name. I can't remember. Randall, thank you, Randall Graves. And it's set far after the first film, and their convenience store has burnt down, and they've got to work at a place called Moobies, which the name by itself, okay, Moobies. I was thinking, moobs? Like man boobs? Is that? Oh no, it's supposed to be like a cow, right? Oh, and every time somebody opens the door, there's the sound of a cow mooing. And would you like the huge burger? And it was like a tilter or tip over or something like that. And
cow tipper, or whatever.
Cow tipper, yeah. So there's all of this wording that can go along with making fun of the fast food situation, which is by itself funny. And you might have a whole film that you can make fun of fast food. I think Waiting does a pretty good job of making fun of restaurants all by itself, so that's fine. But then you've got this existing relationship between Dante and Randall from the first film that stretches it out more than you would expect in this one. And they're actually doing things with their life in this one. It's not just two slackers don't do anything the whole movie. This one, it's two slackers that are trying to do something, but they have difficulty doing so. And it's because they were slackers. I like this a lot, okay? It's not as good as the first one, but I did like this. I laughed out loud a number of times, too. I can't even pick out one particular thing, but you had previously sent me the clip of the Lord of the Rings Star Wars Holy Trilogy scene. And so I already knew that going in, but it was just as effective this time because you've already listened to Randall, like, say 3,000 inappropriate things before we even get to that point, okay? Then there's another scene involving it's inappropriate, okay? It really is. It's racially insensitive to a certain extent, but also you've got Wanda Sykes there with her husband.
What did he say?
And Randall just won't give up the ghost that saying this particular derogatory term is a bad thing just because his grandma called him that. Which, no, it's not the point. All these characters keep trying to convince him of why it's bad, and he just keeps saying it. Wanda Sykes wants to beat his ass, and she has to be restrained. That's a great scene. It really is. And Rosario Dawson is in the movie too, in such a way that first of all, she's a beautiful actress, okay? So to me, I find identifying a little bit with Dante and being that awkward-looking guy, I'm always thinking like, hey, there's no way that he would get Rosario Dawson, okay? But what they do with that character is interesting. It's not that she's lazy and she's the manager of the store, okay? She's in a particular place in life where she's not quite sure where she's going to go, but the progression of events for these characters makes sense. And in a low-budget film like this where you're going more for the laughs and the gross-outs and the extremes, to actually have character development is kind of something. I also dig the soundtrack for this movie. There's something cool about all the songs that they incorporated, including a long-lost Soul Asylum song that I remember from 1995, I think, that I really liked and I'd forgotten all about. So
Was that the Soul Asylum song from the first Clerks movie? Because that was I think that might have been.
Clerks was released in 1993, 94.
But
that
when
song
Miramax
Misery
grabbed
wasn't
it,
released yet.
they put a Soul Asylum song on it, and I don't remember what song it was. Was it at the end?
It was during the end credits.
I
Now,
think
if
that
it's in the
is
first
the
one,
Clerks.
then
Well, I think
please
it's-
never mind. But I recognized it this time for sure as being something that I'd forgotten about. It was a perfect companion piece to the movie. I even watched some of the special features on the disc because I was interested in how I saw a special feature that said talking about the animal erotica scene. And okay, I'll push play on that because I want to know how they're going to talk their way around this. And it's more the actor trying to deal with how he's going to be the aggressor in this situation. He's Kinky Kelly. There is no stripper. And that fooled me. I was expecting something else.
And they don't even stop. They're like, oh, okay.
Right. And the guy that, what is his name in the movie? He's the guy that's never had sex and they're always making
what's his
fun
name?
of. I can't remember his name.
Elias.
In the movie. Elias, yeah.
Pillow Pants.
Yes. He does a really good job of being both so naive that it's hard to imagine somebody being that naive, and also they make fun of him in such a way where you've got to go through this slacker indoctrination or something to be one of them as a group. So it totally works. It is a Kevin Smith movie. I've had some harsh things to say about him, but this is really good Kevin Smith. This isn't the experimental, misses the whole tone to me like Tusk, or not complete like Dogma, or help me, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Those weren't complete for me that you guys like a lot, but overall,
I'm sure we'll come
Clerks
back to
2 was good stuff.
So you didn't notice movies from either Dogma or Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back? It's in both of those.
Say that again.
Movies? It's in both of those.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's all over the Kevin Smith universe.
Well, okay. I haven't seen Dogma since it came out on video, and that was, 2000, 2001. And Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I probably saw early 2002 on DVD. So it's been long enough that it's out of my mind. The fact that it exists, period, I think is very funny. I actually looked it up because I thought, this isn't a real chain, is it? If it is, I've got to have a cow tipper. But no.
I like the dance sequence, the ABC sequence.
Came out of nowhere.
It's so ballsy. It's so ballsy. I love that.
I would have expected that for Silent Bob to pick, considering what he had been picking.
Yeah, and it's funny the whole how Rosario Dawson even got in there because, like, he likes to cast his friends in movies, and Harvey Weinstein was like, "No, you got to cast a real actress," and it was going to be his wife was going to play Rosario Dawson's part, and then they wanted like Ellen Pompeo, but then Grey's Anatomy took off, and then Sarah Silverman said if it was Randall, I'd do that, but I don't want to be the love interest. And Rosario Dawson goes, "Well, this is a donkey show. I'll stick around for that." That was the only reason she jumped on.
Well, his wife ended up playing Dante's fiance, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, that makes me feel better. I was a little worried because when I watched it, I could definitely see flaws in it, but I still liked it enough to.
I had the right mindset going into it this time.
So are you going to watch Zack and Miri?
Oh yeah. Now that I have that in
Next
tow
year.
as well as Martyrs. No, I mean January is coming, so we're going to have some open time sooner or later.
All right. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about before we close off our bonus episode?
No.
Not prepared to end this.
I was thinking of an idea for next year,
Okay.
because what 4 years into it, we're probably running out of ideas, right? Right?
Well, it's really
For
hard
each
to
other?
find Sean shit. Yeah.
Well, perhaps. What if we presented the idea to our listeners as well and say, what would you buy for somebody in your life that you want them to see? And then we could compile like a group of those, say 6, like we did here, and then talk about those movies. It would broaden our scope a little bit, as well as stuff we haven't talked about on the show before. It'll introduce a lot of stuff they would have no reason to talk about as classics or.
We already
anything
have
like
to
that.
sit through a bunch of stuff that Jason from New Mexico.
Yes. I should say this doesn't include Jason. He's already Santa for the podcast, so
Yeah, he's already going to be doing the bonus episode 2 monthly. No, I don't mind that idea. It makes it lot. I mean, it's hard. It really is hard to find something for Sean. Because like Martyrs, they remade it, and I was like, okay, when this comes to the theater, we can talk about it on the podcast. And then I'm like, oh, I just walked by it on Family Video. I'm like, what the fuck is this doing out? And
Apparently, it's not very good.
Yeah.
They didn't make the same movie.
I think they toned it down a lot. All right. Well, that's our bonus episode. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever, and we'll see you next year.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the 3 best friends that anybody could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best 3 friends that anybody can have. I mean, the 3 best friends that anybody can have. The